And we are live. Gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Mecca of Banter podcast. The podcast where another week goes by and we just keep getting better, ladies and gentlemen. We just keep getting better. It is your boy, Hen. I am this week's host. You can find me on Twitter at Henry Wind. It's a great week to be a Manchester United fan because it's a new week. It's a new week. What happened last week doesn't matter. It's of no concern. New week, new horizons. We're on to new things. We're going to check in with the fellas. Excited to have these two boys on the podcast this week. The ever-present, always reliable Connor Sindobri. How you doing?
What's going on, boys? Bounced from the cup this weekend. Yeah, we're just gonna leave. We're just gonna leave it at that. For one of the two things we had left to play for, got bounced from that. So this is where I turned back to the Bielefeld, bit just to get me back through it. Bielefeld knocked out Werder Bremen midweek, their second Bundesliga team. They've knocked down the DFB Polka. Convincing 3-0 win yesterday. They're currently, I believe, 4 points off an automatic promotion spot, so all to play for. City is quite literally, there's not much to say. Back-to-back 0-0 ties in the last 2 weeks. But happy to be here, fellas. It's always good to see you boys and talk a little footy.
Love to have you here. As we always say on this podcast every single week, up the Bielefeld.
Yeah,
up the Bielefeld. Always. You mentioned that as a United fan, we have two things to play for, and we got bounced from one of them, which is exciting. Never fun. It's a hard pill to swallow.
Speaking of bounced.
Well, I was just going to say, in times where I don't know how to progress forward, I like to lean on people that have been there, done that. So coming from a man who's been bounced from every competition, pretty much that he's ever entered in, Lucas Winkelman, as an Arsenal fan, how do we get through this low time in the Manchester United fandom?
It unfortunately happens enough times in a row that you're sort of numb to it.
I was just going to say, you're just numb. It just happens.
Yeah, but it that's not without initial pain. We also seemingly got bounced from one of our two trophies left to play from after last midweek's game. And it's tough when your club is making the right strides but aren't getting the results that you feel like they deserve, and maybe not even deserve, but are making steps towards deserving. I think makes it even more painful. Like United being in the position of, arguably one of the worst teams they've had in a long time while still having these titles to play for is one thing. Whereas we are, outside of Invincibles, arguably one of the best on paper teams that we've had ever in a long time, whatever. And then to still, not beat the teams that we should beat and have unfortunate injuries and not make particular signings isn't a fun thing to actively watch. So, but I'm here. I might have to hop on the Bielefeld train or find my own version of a club like that, and just become religious in that sense.
God, that would just be so gas if we all just started supporting second division German clubs.
Third.
Sorry.
You, Billy, and I talked about this several years ago about doing research on a lower level team, and I think it was Ligue 1, and just I don't think that ever came to fruition, but that might be something we need to pick back up because
it'd be fun.
This is fucking brutal.
Just a little bit of chaos, you know what I'm saying? But Lucas, how are you? Are things
so
well?
Good. Yeah, man. Was sorry I was out last week, but had a long work trip this weekend, and thankfully Arsenal played midweek, so I didn't have to miss the game. But as for any other footy games this weekend, I'm still in the process of rewatching highlight tapes and things like that. But no, I'm stoked to be here. Stoked to play some footy tonight too with you.
Yeah, bro. The return. Let's dive in. Let's dive into some footy because that's what we're here to talk about. The game that we really need to talk about to start things off is St. Louis City for the second week in a row, coming away with 1 point to bring our grand total up to 2 points for the year, with a 0-0 tie in San Diego against the new San Diego team. Connor Sandobri, you watched this game from start to finish. I watched the highlights and watched the game afterwards. Whew, just whew. Give me your thoughts on said game. I mean, we had absolutely nothing going forward. So, I mean, maybe give us a defensive overview, but how are you feeling?
I think overall, I think it's one of those things when looking at the lineup, I know the group chat was kind of bouncing back and forth when we saw the lineup pregame. I guess a couple notable things was one, just seeing Horn slide back in that left-sided center back role, Wallum, jumping into that left wing back role, which I think we all think he probably fits him the best, and he's probably going to be a mainstay there going forward. I think the big sort of like shocking move from Olaf was dropping João Klaus and putting Tukert back in the lineup to kind of partner him with Betcher. When I saw the lineup, honestly, I was kind of excited. It's kind of one of those things where you see a manager make a move after one game to kind of shake things up, to try something new. I think that's always encouraged. It didn't necessarily pan off. I will say, before I kind of get into a little bit of some of the positives and negatives, like going into San Diego on their first ever match, like it was always going to be a hostile environment.
Yeah.
A tough place to play, much like City Park was on the very opening day. I think this game, first off, it's just, if you had to watch it, like everybody, I'm sorry for all of you that sat around and watched every single second of this game. Just looking at some of the stats overall from the game, San Diego had 72% possession. City had 28, right? The total shots on goal, despite that, was we had 2, they had 1, and none of the chances were ever relatively dangerous, and neither team really looked like they were going to score at all. I think from a City perspective, defensively sound again. It's kind of like Nicky. We got to shout him out a little bit because I completely agree. We did keep a shutout again. Zeros are always important. If we keep zeros the rest of the season and figure out how to score goals, that's something that I think that this team can do. Defensively, it was a shame that when MLS Team of the Week came out that Kessler was not on the Team of the Week again.
Yeah.
Because he has, and I tweeted it from the account, he back-to-back weeks has essentially not put a foot wrong in both games that I've seen. Defensively sound, really good on the ball, willing to step in and break the lines, find the easy pass. But truthfully, that is kind of the only positive I think there is to take away from this game at all. I tweeted from the Mecca account that we treated the ball like it was a bomb.
Yeah.
Like quite literally every single time that we were on the ball, we could not get any possession going. We didn't find Hartel in any dangerous areas. Tukert and Betcher, for whatever reason, didn't seem to be on the same page too much either. Yes, I know that they're still both trying to get back in the swing of things. So not a ton of positives. I think the one positive to take away is Kessler and the fact that we didn't lose this game. They were going to complain about 2 0-0 draws, I guess, in two tough places, or excuse me, 2 tough games. But it's just very hard to see something positive moving forward. And I think this is one of those where the City fan base kind of has this like overreactionary, like, doesn't want to say something when it's bad just because people think you're not a good fan. Like I fully think that, like, just because I say that we're terrible going forward and it was one of the worst things I've ever watched this year so far in terms of a football standpoint, doesn't mean that I don't believe that we can fix it. But fellas, it was really, really, really bad all around. Yeah.
Bad. Yeah. And I think it's just odd. Like, I mean, not that we have ever been the most prolific team of scoring goals, but we've been used to a little bit more, at least chances. Like chances, you might hit it over the bar. I was texting the guys earlier today, and the night of, I didn't get to watch the game, but I watched the last 15 minutes. Saw the last 15 minutes not being positive whatsoever. And so when the highlights came out, I was like, all right, I'll start with the extended highlights. The first offensive highlight that we had came in like the 39th minute. And like the offensive highlight was dribbling it into the final third, and then the defense took it away. And then there was only one other offensive highlight the rest of the game. And I was like, that feels
so eerily familiar right now.
Yeah. Both your teams, bro. But part of it is kind of exactly what you said, Dobes, of like perhaps it's Cedric and Simon figuring out their spacing or figuring out where Hartle wants to play. But I think the other part of it is it seems like we're just making weird runs. I know that clips and individual moments are damning. Like, it doesn't always give the full context of things, but there are several clips circulating the Twitter sphere where, you know, certain aggregator accounts are showing where like we get a turnover in kind of like the middle part of the field. And instead of looking forward, we're looking to turn around. And to make it even worse, our forwards, whether it was Simon or Cedric, like instead of making a forward run, they were actually dropping in behind the ball to pick the ball up. So I don't know if that's a tactical thing or a structural thing. Like, I'm not quite sure, but it's not great from an attacking perspective.
I think the most frustrating part about, and it's tough to like put blame on Olaf because but I still don't understand the reasoning of taking Edward Lewin off in the 61st minute.
Yeah.
Like, it still doesn't make sense. Like, I understand, like, Durkin came into the game, like right after halftime, I believe.
Yeah.
Like, in a game where we could not seem to put our foot on the ball and hold it to save our life. Like, I was high on Alfredo Morales after the first game because he came in and oozed confidence, demanded the ball. I just don't understand why don't play them together. Like, I just don't understand. And I know that Akil brings sort of that, like, he's kind of like a buzz or a pest. He's kind of all over the field, presses well, gets into tackles.
Mm-hmm.
But this was a game where it just seemed to me like taking Lewin out that early in the game with 30 minutes left to go, like, it just didn't add up to me. Like, he's one of the guy, and I'm going to use the phrase that I need to retire, but like, he's the guy that's supposed to be the metronome in our team in terms of demand the ball, keep the ball for a little bit, get us a decent spell of possession, and then we work to build forward in the final third. So his sub in the 61st minute did not make any sense at all to me. And I do think that there's a world as well. Like, and I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. I know you guys didn't watch this game, but Chucky Lozano getting hurt, if he doesn't get hurt, I 1000% think we lose that game. Because when he was on the field, I think he got injured in like the 35th or something around the 30th minute. He was all over the place. And the Dreyer dude, who's our number 10, who plays out right, really, really good. And the fact that once Chucky came out, and I hate him, always will hate him. That's that USA-Mexico rivalry right there. But I'm willing to admit that he's a really good player. I think if he doesn't get injured, we lose that game for sure. But overall, just a really, really, really weird fixture in terms of basically everything except for Kessler and us not conceding.
Do you make anything of the end of the game when there were, for the first time in an MLS game, I've heard it in CONCACAF games, but there was the announcer that came over the loudspeaker, and you could pick it up on the broadcast. You could hear clearly where they said like the stuff about the homophobic chants.
I think that's one of those things that it shouldn't happen. And I think the MLS is going to come out with a statement, and, you know, they may like put a slap on the wrist to San Diego. I think just based off of where San Diego is and the kind of the demographic of like the fan base that's there, that happens sort of on all of you. Look at the Hispanic games and you watch on TV, or we've even been at games like that where it does happen before. I think it's just one of those things where you see it all over Europe. We're trying to get that sort of stuff out of the game, like regardless. What the MLS does about it, I don't necessarily know if they've ever experienced it before.
Yeah, this might be new territory for them.
Yeah, for sure.
We have coming up, we have a Sunday game actually, which is different, but we're going to be playing LA Galaxy, which could be there for the taking, to be honest with you. There's a lot of opportunity there. Do we predict any differences in the lineup? Do we predict anyone maybe getting sat or coming in? I think maybe we might see Baumgartel. Allegedly, he didn't play this last game because he was sick all week. And it was even a surprise that they included him in the matchday squad, that he was even traveling with the team because of the sickness. But I could see that happening maybe for a Hebert. I'm not sure. But there's even a world that there is a little bit more rotation maybe in the front. I think you might bring Klaus back in and maybe you sit Cedric again. I'm not sure. But there has to be some spark on the offensive side that brings these boys back into it.
We have to get Hartle more involved in the attack going forward.
So that's actually something that
has to happen, man.
Well, I'm curious if anything structurally or from a formation perspective, because I remember after the first game we talked about he couldn't find the ball at all. And that was quite literally never a problem last year. Nikki, welcome to the pod. Happy to have you. We're recapping St. Louis City, but how are you doing, first of all?
I'm fantastic. It's crazy what 3 points will do for you, but happy to be here, boys.
3 points, you'll never sing that, all of us on here. But last year there was quite literally never a problem with Hartle finding the ball in any part of the field, in any space. So maybe it's a little cold feet of him getting up to speed, but we got to find a way to get him more involved for sure.
I also think when you look at, and this is no slight on Hebert, because I do think Hebert brings different qualities to this team, but he's not exactly the progressive pass, look to break the lines type of guy. And we probably saw the same tweet, but there is I saw a sequence in a tweet that there was 4 or 5 different times in which Hartel was open and we just played the ball backwards.
Yeah. So
I'm not necessarily sure what caused that, but at the same time, it's the opportunities are there for him to find the ball. And I do kind of like your idea a little bit of still keep the same formation, but maybe play Hartel as that sort of second striker and let him play off of Klaus.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I do think that we have to, and Kessler is one of the one of the 3 center backs that's willing to find that pass. If this formation is going to work to get him involved, we need to take more risk in terms of breaking the line to find him, beating that first line of confrontation, find Hartel in space, let him turn, let Lewin get up, and then see if we can create. We're not going to create anything if we're just trying to go down the wings and making it happen that way.
Yeah, I think that Hebert's probably our most risk-averse guy that we have on our team. He does not like to throw that pass whatsoever. But we got to find a way to get the boys cooking. LA Galaxy on Sunday will be our next test, and we'll see what we have going on with there. Transitioning from St. Louis City to, normally we don't always cover this league because we just don't always, but we have to talk about Italy, what's going on in Italy right now, and specifically the Napoli-Inter game that finished 1-1. And mind you, that's the number 1 and number 2 team in Italy. Now, fellas, that felt like a Champions League final. Not only was the crowd crazy, you could hardly hear the announcers on the stream, but you're talking guys absolutely throwing themselves at the ball, the highest level of commitment from these characters. What a difference that is from some of the games that we're watching on a weekly basis. Did any of you get the chance to tune into that game?
I watched the whole thing, and my biggest takeaway is, man, do I miss Scott McTominay?
Yeah, bro.
But to your point, Hen, these games, and yes, it's the top 2 teams in the league, but I do think it's just the league as well too. It had a different feel, man.
Crazy.
There was tackles flying left and right. I mean, the DeMarco goal on the set piece too, just the whip, fantastic. Napoli coming back to keep their title hopes alive. This is just one of those where, having watched so much Prem, very few Prem games have that same feel with the fans into it, with just the passion, the coaches, and yes, it's the Italian screaming and just but the Prem doesn't have that. I don't think the league top to bottom is as good. But there's very few things that are like a Real Barca, a Napoli Inter, an AC Milan Inter game, just where the fans and the atmosphere it's peak footy. It really is.
Well, that's what's so interesting is what was it, 2 weeks ago was when City and Liverpool played. And so I know that City isn't the number 2 team in the league, but I mean, for the last, 6 years, those have been the 1 and 2 teams. It was nothing like this Inter Napoli game. I mean, it was outrageous. I haven't been glued to the TV in a soccer game like that in a long time. I mean, shout out to both of those teams. It was incredible to watch.
And when I have this take, I'm not saying that these 2 teams qualify it, but I feel like, Doze, what you were saying is they play in a league where top to bottom they're not as good as the Prem, so they're playing some of these teams who almost have to be physical against some of these higher up clubs. So I feel like that is where in Italy they're able to play with a little bit more hunger and fight, because some of those lower league teams that they play week in and week out are literally just going to try to hurt you, because that's the only way they can get points.
Yeah, and it's so funny too. I guess even if you want to break it down tactically, and this is for the soccer nerds. This is not for the casual fan, but when you look at the way that they progress the ball, it's so different than what we see in England. Specifically, if you want to watch just an interesting formation, watch videos on Inter. Watch the way that they progress the ball and the formations that they play and the freedom that the center backs and the center midfielders play with. It's insane. And once you see it kind of like a tactical breakdown from the top, you can't unsee it. But the way that they exploit space, it's stuff that you don't see in the Premier League. It's stuff that you don't see it in La Liga. So
I'm gonna say something.
Do it, Dubs. Say something. Go crazy.
Lukaku was good, man.
He was great, bro. He was awesome.
Hey,
Dude.
Like seriously, like I will say it's one of those where first off, Billy Gilmore was really, really good too. And he hadn't been in the team. Not that I knew this, I learned it from the commentators, but he hadn't been playing as much over the past couple of months. But they have so many injuries that he had to step in. He was good. But just even Lukaku, the hold-up play, the ability to use the big frame to get the ball down and link up play, like I'm not going to sit here and say I watch Napoli week in and week out to understand like if he does it all the time. But like he was really, really good at all the small details that I would kill for Rasmus Højlund to be good at.
Well, that's what was funny. Is like we just watched.
That's what I compare it to. It's literally what I compare it to. Yeah.
The Ipswich game where Rasmus couldn't touch the ball to save his life, and then you watch Lukaku, who was the laughing stock of Chelsea, the laughing stock of Manchester United, and he just balls out. He was great. So if you haven't tuned into Serie A, please do. It is a title race for the ages. I mean, quite literally, there's a great title race going on in Spain, in Italy, not so much in England, but you got to tune in.
Bundesliga 3.
Yeah, Bundesliga 3.
What do you think it is that makes Serie A so much more? And I know it might be because we don't get to watch it as often, but what is it about the league that makes it? I know we touched on like the physicality and just sort of the energy around it, but do you think it's really that, or do you think we're just so used to watching English football that anything different seems
I think
like that much crazy?
I mean, from what I've seen, and this is just my personal opinion, when you watch Serie A, most of the fan bases are insane. Like, I mean, you've seen those iconic photos of AC Milan and Inter, the two guys like with their arms around each other with all the flares going on in the background. I mean, it's always been that way. It's always been chaotic. And when you have that like chaotic pressure from the crowd, you have to play that way. It's like sometimes we talk about Liverpool, that when Liverpool get rocking and Anfield is on their feet, it is deafening and it feels like you're drowning out on the field. That's like every game over there. So I feel like there's an aspect of that those players have to rise up to. But I mean, even 20 years ago, 25 years ago, Serie A was always known as the defensive capital of the world leagues. Like that's where you went for defensive stability. So like Simeone and how he's like freaking out with Conor Gallagher, making two slide tackles in a row. I don't know if you guys saw that clip on Twitter this weekend. It was incredible. Conor Gallagher made 2 back-to-back slide tackles, and Simeone and his assistants are like freaking out. Like Simeone is a Serie A manager. Like that is like the feeling that we have.
Conor Gallagher is a Simeone player.
Yeah, bro, through and through. So I think that there's a little bit of fan influence in that, and just like the environment that they expect out of you to play hard. You see guys that get a ton of shit from the fan base just from not going into tackles, not working hard, not doing that. But guys like Scott McTominay that may not be the most skilled in the world, but always going to give 100%, they're going to be loved over there. So I don't know. I think that's just my personal opinion from watching.
I agree. I think it's just that the historic fierce rivalries, like you said, and I think that like the tactical mastery of the Italian football has been there. I mean, you go all the way back to early 2000s, even past that. Like you look at some of those Italy teams, like they were built on an insane back four that did everything to fight for the logo on the front of their jersey, and that just carries over into the Inter AC Milan rivalry, the Juve Napoli rivalry. It's just. I do think Winkster is a little bit too of the fact that we don't watch it week in and week out. So when we do, we recognize it more. So I will say caveat with, I do think, at least for me, that plays a role for sure.
Yeah.
Moving a while since an Italian team has won the Champions League. I just looked that up. It's
been a minute, but Inter was there 2 years ago. Like they were in the final, and they were honestly 3 Lukaku misses away from sweeping the floor. Yeah. Lukaku literally missed 3 mega chances at the end of the game.
It's always a double-edged sword with Lukaku. You can always find something with him.
Moving from Italy to England, while the title race in England may not be exciting at all, it is interesting to note that the 3rd position all the way down to the 11th position in the Prem is separated by only 10 points, which is kind of crazy. That is
involve
insane.
us.
No. Couldn't be United. But
couldn't be me.
We team in that position.
We are going to start with United coming off of a 3-2 win against Ipswich with a controversial Patrick Dorgu red card. But Bruno being Bruno saves the day again. Dobes, 3-2 against Ipswich. Any thoughts there?
Never going to complain about a win. I think just in the manner in which this game happened, like just giving up a goal in the 4th minute is like
it's so stupid.
It's so frustrating, and it's like one of those things where credit to the boys for like coming back and battling.
I thought it was over. The moment that went in, I was like, oh my God, so bad.
In battling, you know what I mean? And just battling back in terms of like getting back in the game. And the Dorgu red card did happen. I think that's one of those things where you watch it back and it's hard to say it's not a red card. If it's your team, I'm kind of like, he won the ball. His foot was facing the ground. He had no intention of getting him, but at the same time, like if you're a referee, it's very hard to not give that.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that it was such a shame that I think that he was the player that got it, because I think throughout the beginning of that game, he was arguably the most consistent player in terms of creating something going forward.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm going to continue to say it. Like Bruno Fernandes is. It's tough to put into words just how good of a player he is, and if you watch football and you watch Bruno, and if you don't think he's world class, I don't. Your footy opinion does not mean anything to me at all. Just what he's done over the
footy opinion means nothing to you.
Who?
Roy Keane.
I mean, Roy Keane also does a lot of that because he's on the overlap and needs clicks. And it was also bad timing because they record that episode on Sunday and then Bruno does that on Tuesday or on Wednesday.
Hat trick. He was like,
yeah, bro.
Well, I do think that part of that is just Roy Keane comes from that old school football mind of captains have to be the biggest personality, the rah-rah, yell, scream, get everybody up going. But I think that when you look at, there has not been a single player, coach, person that has ever come out of Manchester United that has ever not had glowing things to say about Bruno Fernandes. He mentors the youth, shares their posts on Instagram. Every single player in the team is close with him. I firmly believe that if you put him in a Real Madrid team, you put him in a Barcelona team, you put him in one of the top teams in the world, he's one of the best players in the world. And it's just one of those where the saddest thing it would be him not winning a major trophy at Manchester United. But if next year, for whatever reason, he wanted to go and go to Real Madrid, do it, man. Like he 100% deserves to go play for a top club. And people don't realize, like, where would we be without him? Like, for real. Like, he's had double. He's been at least 10 goals, 10 assists in every single season that he's played in the Premier League. I mean, a lot of that, like we can talk about the FA Cup if we want, but he did the same thing again yesterday for us. Unbelievable finish. So really, I think he's going to be the only positive. I mean, credit Maguire as well, but like Bruno is just Bruno, man. And for all of the lack of leadership stuff, the on-field stuff, he makes up it tenfold with just his play.
Yeah, and we can bring in the FA Cup tie into this segment as well. I know that that's jumping ahead a little bit, but you know, it's so crazy to see us win 3-2 against Ipswich, which, by the way, are relegation nailed on, that they're going to be relegated, but we have to just absolutely squeak by with a 3-2 victory. We defended for 45 minutes with 10 men, we defended a lead for 45 minutes. It's not good. But you mentioned Bruno Fernandes. It is one of those things that he can be so frustrating. I have had my fair share of frustrations with him. By no means is he the password to my emails or Twitter accounts, but
log in all my shit if you guys want.
But at the same time, like, he is the only player on the field that can consistently bail us out of pretty much any situation, so it's unfortunate, as we look at the FA Cup getting knocked out in pens. It's frustrating against Fulham. A semi-favorable draw, even though Fulham is ahead of us in the league. We draw Fulham at home, and we just can't get anything going. It's insane that we have Rasmus Højlund again. I think he's going on 18, 19 games now without a goal, which is bad. That is not good. But then you have a 17-year-old come in the second half to get a run out on the field. He balled out. And granted, there was 2 chances that had he had a better touch, he probably could have gotten a shot off, and he didn't.
Sorry, I was looking at something.
Yeah.
I thought
Cheeto Obi. He was very impressive, and he has room to grow. But that's kind of what I'm saying is you have Rasmus Højlund who gets 65 minutes in that exact game and doesn't even look dangerous a single time. I mean, he had one shot, but the shot that he took was way in front of the front post. It went really wide. And then you have Cheeto Obi come on to the field, and he gets 3 chances from the runs that he makes, and it's 3 chances that could have been more had United played him in. There are several chances that Garnacho didn't slip him in or Xerxes didn't slip him in, and that's going to come with time. But man, does Rasmus Højlund just need some time on the bench? I mean, I'm not on this. I'm trying really hard with the current crop of players. I know that they're not all good enough. And Amorim, after the game, even said, "Hey, I've been honest with my players. Not all of them are going to be here next year." And that's a crazy statement to make at this time. However, I'm trying not to lose my mind with these players week in and week out. I know that they're not good enough, and Rasmus badly needs some mentorship and needs some time on the bench. And who's to say that a kid 4 years younger than him can't come in and be better? But Rasmus just has absolutely nothing going on the field. It's bad.
Four positives I'm going to take away from this game. He's one of them. Cheeto is one of them. I think 17 years old. He's one of them. I think 2 for me is Lenny Yoro. I think back-to-back games he has shown just how good he can be. I do think that it sucks me to take him off. I did read that we kind of are saving him for Thursday with Sociedad, which quite literally is our season. He is just a specimen too, man. Like he's packed on some weight since he's been at United. Really, really good on the ball, can dribble, really good defensively, really fast. I'm going to give Aiden Haven credit. Heaven True, however you want to say it. When he came on, I thought he held his own in a tough environment in an FA Cup game. And then I know he missed his penalty, but I'm going to continue to say it. Joshua Xerxes, there's a player there, man.
Yeah.
Like there's a player in that one the sequence that's going everywhere. The turn, the beating the player and the ball to Garnacho. It's like, and I think the biggest thing is like the one thing you can't question about with Xerxes is he cares. Like he
works his ass off.
He cares. You can't, embarrassingly enough, you can't say that about our entire team. But Joshua Xerxes truthfully cares about the badge, and he's earned his way back into a lot of good graces of United fans after getting subbed off in the first half. That's the responsive mentality of somebody you want. Whether he fits or not in the future plans of Amorim, I don't know. But you're not going to find me say that there's not a player there.
Yeah, I also found it to be frustrating. Is what it is. But as we went into extra time, we were looking to make any sub possible because our guys were just running themselves into the ground, and we quite literally didn't have another player on the bench. We only had 2 goalies on the bench. We didn't have anyone else healthy, which was frustrating as a fan. I'm like, could we have not brought, a couple more?
We got Mason Mount posting in pictures with fucking Jorginho and Ben Chilwell.
It kills me. So, being knocked out of the FA Cup, it hurts. Thank God we have JP in our group chat to make it realize that this cup doesn't matter at all. But as Dobes, you alluded to, we have Real Sociedad on Thursday, which are coming off back-to-back really tough games for them.
Yeah, I mean, that script is written then. The script is written. They've been terrible. They'll find the form Thursday, won't they?
Hopefully we have Patrick Dorgu that can play because it's not a domestic competition. Hopefully that provides something. But enough about United. We'll talk about them soon enough. Arsenal Winks, I'd be curious your thoughts on this, and cue the button. This is not banter, but I feel like after this result against Forest is 0-0 tie, I think that is officially the league being gone. I think at this stage, at this time, there's too great of a distance between yourself and Liverpool, and there's too much reliance on them dropping a ton of points. Now, that's not going to change your approach. That's not going to change you wanting to win every game. But I do think officially I'm comfortable with saying the league has escaped Arsenal's grasp.
Yeah.
He said, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's over till, the magic number is hit, whatever that is in this case. But looking solely at the table and not even Liverpool's trajectory, but our trajectory, 2 goals in our last 4 games isn't something that a team can do and still win a Premier League title.
Yeah.
We drew Forest 0-0 in what was a defensive masterclass with maybe one big chance on either side of the ball. The story of the second half of our season has been, putting offensive pressure for a lot of the game on the entire opposing team except for their goalkeeper. And, this was a perfect example of that game, getting into the box, Nwaneri, Rice, Timber, etc. had chances, and then our biggest one coming from Calafiori turning Dominguez with that fake step over, which was disgusting. And then hitting the post that came straight back to the keeper's hands. But it's getting sold saying it, but we can't be relying on our left wing back to be the one to create that shot chance. It needs to come from a striker and, a winger at times as well, which, we saw Nwaneri have a similar move and just couldn't get a shot off in time before he was closed down. But you talked about it, about United players and how Xerxes just like fights for the badge. So I genuinely believe that our entire team, I don't think like there is a bad apple of a player that's getting on the field and that I see that doesn't feel like he's fighting for the badge. It's just literally we can't put a quality chance in the back of the net, and they're few and far between outside of the City game recently that I can think of where we capitalized on an opportunity like that. And so it's not a bad problem from the perspective of everybody. From what I see, is playing with passion for the Arsenal badge, but it's just this group without someone up top to be a killer, doesn't have the capability to do that. And we're supposed to talk back in a couple weeks, but I still feel like that's not going well. I mean, by that time, statistically, the league could be out of our hands.
Yeah.
But even more so, having him back without us having a striker, teams are going to be able to double him on the side, and he's not going to get the same kind of chances and goal contributions that he got in the first half of the season without somebody up top to sort of draw defenders away from him, or at least one of the that left side center back. So
similar to Cole Palmer, but yeah, keep going.
Yeah, pretty much. But at least he can put balls in the back of the net. Unfortunately, well, actually not recently, but prior to that, Odegaard has had some great chances as well the last 5-10 games, and he hasn't been able to finish either. And so, start of the season, or back half of the season, nobody to consistently put goals in the back of the net, and that's not going to win Champions League. That's not going to win a Premier League. That's not going to win a Mickey Mouse Cup or an FA Cup. So, for now, I'm just in a mental state of, wanting to win every game that's left, but low hopes, unfortunately, for.
What's kind of funny is I don't think, because we play you guys Sunday, I believe. I don't think a United Arsenal game has meant less.
For sure.
In a long and the reason I'm saying it, obviously we want to win, and it's more so we can talk shit on this podcast. But if it meant like Bruno or somebody getting injured and then not being able to play midweek next week against Sociedad, like rest them. Like
Yeah,
I
totally.
wholeheartedly, and I think Arsenal's a little bit in the same boat where it's like, yes, you're not going to give up on the league, but like PSV is very much a winnable draw to where you can probably get Saka back for the later stages of quarterfinal on to where both the other competitions are 100% for us, not as much for you guys, are way more important than this game on Sunday.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I agree. Like I don't think it would be a bad idea for us to just like, knowing that whatever happens at this point potentially won't really have a big impact as far as like where we play or don't play in Europe next year.
Did you see any highlights of like the U18 Arsenal against United
Yeah,
game?
that Dowan kid is
Oh my
disgusting.
God.
That was disgusting.
I was
he
texting
15?
I think
Yeah,
he's
I was
14.
texting two of my
14?
buddies, two of my Arsenal buddies, and I was like, "Do you think he could maybe play striker?
Can he-
Well,
And can they get the 10 off of his shirt because historically that has not boded well."
for Arsenal. No, but what I'm saying is we should just get a handful of those U18 players on both teams,
Fuck yeah.
and then throw out like Jorginho for us. Throw out like Victor Lindelof,
Casemiro.
Zinchenko can play for you. Cassie will play for us, and then it'll be like the U18 players, which would be electric.
A Cheeto goal this weekend.
Washed up.
Oh, like that would
Washed
just
up and
in the
guns.
18-year-olds. Like I think that would at least add some like fan fun. But
also, how sad is that we even have to like debate
totally
for other of our
but
clubs?
I think what Dope said is true of like in the context of the last 10 years, maybe less, there hasn't been an Arsenal United game in the league that has mattered less for either team. But
it reminds me a lot of the North London derbies recently. Like they mattered, but they also didn't because the last like 3 years neither team has been at full strength and had
that's a good way
sort
of
of
phrasing
thing
it. I thought that you were just going to say
No.
because Tottenham has never been a contender, which I was like, that's a low blow to say when Hoof's not here. But
what are we contending for at the current state of our team? No, it's not.
But it is interesting. I have to imagine that you're in relatively a similar boat that we are over here. That when it comes to the league, knowing that the cup, the European cups are more important to us at the moment, you have to just want to see progress in ideas, in progression.
I'll tell you what I want to say as not an Arsenal fan. I want to see last year's Martin Odegaard, man. He's been a shell of himself this year, just in terms of finishing, creativity. Like, I think I picked him to be the player of the year or close to it.
Two injuries and one at the beginning of the season where he's out for a couple months never helps anybody. I don't really know what he needs, but it's tough to. I obviously want to see progress too, but knowing that we're gonna have somebody different up top next year or next season makes it hard to see where the progression could come from outside of individual performances getting better, like a Martin Odegaard or someone like that. Like I want to see Lewis Skelly and Nwaneri continue to get minutes, knowing we're on the trajectory we are. At the very least, they get a little more comfortable so that next year we're deeper. When these injuries inevitably come, but I think Rice has had a great season. Our back line has had a great season. David Raya has had a great season. But guys like Martinelli and then the youngsters, guys like Odegaard and then the youngsters and then Martinelli on top of that, finding his form. Otherwise, I could see him leaving at some point in the near future.
Force is also not a bad side. So like
they're not at all.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we're talking about like the number 3 team in the league. Like it's not a. But
I'm talking about it as accumulation of like even the week before when we played West Ham. That's a team we should beat 10 out of 10 times with the team we have. And I say it all the time when we're in this title race is like you just got to focus on the next game and win the games that you're supposed to win. And West Ham has our fucking number. Everton seems to have our number at least once a year.
Yeah.
And you can't win a title if you can't beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. So
I did see something that was going on today that I saw Fabrizio tweet about Andrea Berta or something, whatever his name was, the ex-sporting director at Atletico, that you guys were like, I don't know if there's a deal struck, but you guys were close to a deal or something.
There were rumors we were close with Sociedad's sporting director as well. So I don't know. Signing someone soon would only help us as far as starting any sort of talks by the time the summer comes. But
yeah, I mean, in a season like this where it feels like kind of everything's passing you by, sometimes it also is cool to see like individual performances that you can look back on. Cole Palmer being one last year that while Chelsea didn't finish where they wanted to, Cole Palmer's goal scoring prowess was incredible. It was so fun to watch. And I want to remind you that Lewis Skelly has an opportunity to set some records as well. I think it's the least amount of minutes played with the most amount of red cards in an individual season. So, I mean, I want that kid to play as much as possible, So,
I did see that he has the highest like win rate of like tackles on the ground or something like that in the
whatever.
Yeah.
Who cares? Fuck him. Chelsea, did you guys see the tweet going around of like the Ukraine you'll never walk alone from earlier, and then like all the like fans were saying like Ukraine comma whatever like their club's chant is, and the one guy just said Ukraine comma Chelsea, which was just so funny. But Chelsea had something to celebrate this week, Nikki. 3 points in 4 goals against relegation-bound Southampton. How good did those 3 points feel?
Like crack. It's crazy what 3 points.
God, I needed this.
You have no idea. You said it earlier. The battle for top 4 right now is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
3 points were absolutely huge for us. We're now within 2 points of both Forest and City, so that's just absolutely huge for us in the table. Also, we haven't been able to find the back of the net in the last couple of games. We've kind of gotten quick goals or missed steps from City and like not great goals from free play. And so the fact we got to see 4 of them in that game made me very happy. I will say Southampton is awful.
Yeah, bro.
I thought at the beginning of the year, and quote of the season, this isn't banter, but when Southampton played Arsenal, I think Arsenal still won 3-1, but like I thought Southampton looked pretty good. Like
totally.
Bro, they scored first against us.
Yeah, and like I don't know what happened and where they've progressed after those couple of games, but they were awful against us because by no means did we have this like outrageously good performance.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we were able to find the back of the net. I think some of our big players were Enzo Fernandez. I thought he played phenomenal. I thought Neto in his new role is working out well, and for him to find the back of the net and to get an assist, it's just a confidence builder for him. So I'm super pumped for him moving forward. Cucurella getting on the score sheets, every time he does, I laugh because like his celebrations are so stupid, but like I just have to laugh because he continues to find the net as well. But yeah, the 3 points were huge for us. I also love a shutout. You guys know that. I'll never complain when we get a shutout. It's quite interesting though. There's still so much talk about our goalie situation. I don't know how I feel about it. I think Petrovic for Sociedad is playing incredible at the moment, so good luck. And I can't wait to see what we do with him possibly in the summer. But with Jurgensen playing and Sanchez obviously sitting on the bench, him getting a clean sheet once again, just more confidence for him. So hopefully he can finish out the season and somewhat relieve my stress of our goalie troubles because I saw a stat. It was like, if you take all 4 of our signings for new goalies in the last year, we could have signed the most expensive goalie in the past like 2 years combined or something. And I'm just like, love that. Like, thanks. It was like, we went from Petr Cech, Courtois to fucking Kepa. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I mean, you can say all you want about the way that the guys are playing, but at some point you just have to ask questions of the scouting
100%.
department, specifically the goalie scouts. Like,
100%. And I think they tried to go with the approach what they're doing for the rest of our club, which is buy and hope they kind of pan out. And I feel like the goalie position is that one position where you probably should not be doing that because it's such a experienced position. Like you need, not only do you need the talent, but you need the experience as well, because there's a lot of pressure on you and you're pretty much reading the game for the entire defense. So I feel like that's the one area, like if we were to go out and buy someone, we need to buy someone big, and I'm hoping we do that here.
I still think it's interesting that you all let go of Mendy when you did.
Very much.
Like, granted, don't get me wrong, he was making mistakes, like he did, but like you would think that he earned a little cash in the bank with the Champions League win, and I think that year he was also voted like the world's best goalie or whatever.
He's got some De Gea in him where he could just stop
100%.
shots.
Yeah, and he can also have a howler, but like,
because
I still
Thiago Silva in the back who could ping the ball with the best of them, so
Totally.
he wasn't having to do anything with his feet. And then the moment that kind of went away, we saw the decline, and I think he just cashed out on him at like his peak timing and went to Saudi and made a shit ton of money.
Yeah, very true.
But I agree with you. He was in our Champions League run against Real Madrid. Oh my word, he was absolutely insane. And you mentioned that. I thought he was our next Petr Cech, and then he kind of fell off, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm not okay.
You said that the goalkeeping position is such an experienced position, and United fans talked about it a lot with De Gea when he left. That De Gea had some howlers in him. I think the stat that came out last week after Onana's bullshit that he had last weekend, where he like dove out and passed the ball to the attacker, but Onana's had 12 mistakes leading to goals in the last 2 years, which is insane. And De Gea had 17 in the last, I think, 6 years. So obviously that ratio is different.
5 in one season, but
you're like, let's go. But like it takes pressure to play that position and to play through it. I mean, Hugo Lloris, if Hugo was here, he'd say how many mistakes Hugo Lloris made, but more often than not, that guy was solid between the pipes. So I think you got to find a keeper who can bear that responsibility, and it's really hard to buy for that. You just kind of got to get lucky. I mean, I think of even in the world game, like you think of Donnarumma, which I don't know how great he actually is, or maybe it's the hype. You think of Diogo Costa and for Porto. I don't know. You're definitely not getting Courtois out of Madrid. You're not getting Oblak out of Atletico. Like, there's very few in the world's game that you feel like you could put in and they'd make that difference. So I have no idea.
Yeah, supposedly we have, and I'm blanking on his name right now, but I was reading it earlier. But apparently someone in our youth system, possibly just on our bench or on our roster, he's a young goalie, and apparently there's so much talk around him. And I'm almost thinking we bring back Petrovic, because I think he's been doing great.
Yeah, totally.
Good at, and literally just try to hold on to him as long as we can, and hopefully this youngster pans out to be. And if he doesn't pan out to be, then we're gonna have to splash some cash again for another goalie.
Thankfully, you guys have no problem splashing some cash.
Thank God.
Bring it on. I will also, I do want to say we had a debut for a 17-year-old Mueka. I thought he came on and didn't look awful. I don't think he obviously provided any crazy spark to our team at the time, but I don't think he looked awful, and he definitely fit in. So shout out.
Yeah, I think it's hard to do that in the 90th minute.
Yep.
He came on, he lit up the game for the 37 seconds he was on the field, baby.
Absolutely. But like, we're not going to definitely stand out well.
Yeah, for sure. You can get a red card. We're not going to dive deep into either of these games, but it is worth noting Tottenham lost to Manchester City 1-0, which is big because Tottenham is typically City's bogey team. But it's always a close game with them. And then we also have Liverpool beating Newcastle 2-0, which is massive, again, for their title charge. That, for me, was after seeing that result. I felt like that was, again, with Arsenal tying, that was just another feeling of distance.
They just make it look like Newcastle is a good, they're a good team. And they just make it look effortless, man. Like, it's crazy.
I've dogged this man for this entire podcast's existence, but he just finds a fucking way to do it, and it's the most annoying thing ever. And I'm starting to realize, it's like, is it just annoying, or is it more like he's at that level to where his experience is so good? It's like, I don't want to say Messi-esque, but he's able to pan and read the game to where he just impacts at the right time to win games. Like,
yeah, there's no doubt that there's such a high level of skill that goes with that, and the production is great. I'll never back down from the eye test. Just being
I agree with you, Henry. I agree with you, but the man is still scoring goals.
people don't want to hear about it. You know what I'm saying? Gentlemen, before we wrap up, this week is Champions League week. We have some bangers of games. Tuesday, it starts off with Arsenal, PSV Eindhoven, and we also have the Madrid derby. We have Real Madrid taking on Atletico Madrid. I expect that one to have some firecrackers in it. And then we come on Wednesday, hitting it hard with the Bayern Munich Leverkusen game, as well as PSG Liverpool, amongst a couple of other competitions. So make sure you're tuning in.
Brother, you kind of slept on that Bruges Villa game.
You think that that's going to be tasty?
But Villa. First off, I enjoy watching them because their front three is insane. Club Bruges is good. Notice how you score 4 goals this weekend, and Sancho doesn't score one of them.
He's just that had nothing to do with Rashford. Do with Rashford.
But I do think that no Jude is going to be big.
Yeah,
Jude is going to be big.
Wait, is he out for the Champions League game too?
He's suspended. Yeah.
Damn, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's going to be a big deal because Madrid are definitely.
Yeah, he's suspended.
He said the after.
It's okay though. They'll just slide in Luka Modric. Darn.
Yeah, but I mean, they lose legs, bro. I don't know if you watched them over the weekend. But
yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. When Jude is up there sitting in the press box with the revolving celebrity door girlfriend that he's got.
See all the memes of like mom staring her down.
But there was a TikTok I saw that was going through the amount of famous people that girl had been with, and it wasn't like a 30-second video. It was like a 2.5-minute video. Dude.
It's bad. It's bad.
He's more partners than he has goals and assists in La Liga.
Yeah.
That was
good for Jude though. Good for Jude.
Hey, but fellas, make sure you're paying attention to the Champions League and more importantly, the CONCACAF Champions Cup that's also going on midweek. So make sure you look at that. But before we head out, Dobes and Nick, question for you. Our Mecha Footy League is back and better than ever, capping off our first game of the season with a little bit of a loss. Not going to lie, we did lose that game. But as you two were the only two present from this party, what do we got to do to get back onto the W column this next week?
It's just one easy thing, which is subs. We are
like all the people showing up to the game.
Well, yeah, we had 0 subs and we played freshmen in colleges, so they were just running everywhere, and a lot of our defenders lost some of their steam towards the end, and we're not good on the counter, so we kind of got fucked.
Let me tell you, fellas, my foot is a long way from my heart. Like just let me tell you. No, I mean, when you concede 7 goals, fellas, you got to look at the goalie situation.
Nate Griffin, we're coming for you.
You got to look at the goalie situation. There may be call to the bullpen, sponsored by Hardee's. Like we may have to change things up in the goal.
We made a goalie change at half.
How many did we concede in the first half? 4?
Yeah, I think it was 4.
3 in the second half. 3 in the second half.
Hey, people don't want to talk about it.
So bad because literally the first shot of the season was a goal for the other team, and I was like, "Nate, great start to the year, brother." And he was like,
that's incredible.
Yeah, it's gonna be a long.
No, we just need some legs, fellas. We got our player way into shape. Little Luka Doncic, just player way into shape.
That's what I'm talking about.
I will say we have to give a big shout to my Uncle Al, who's a huge listener of the pod. He actually showed up and watched. So
that's awesome.
Love that.
Love Uncle Al. Shout out to you. Fellas, that wraps it for this week's episode of the Mecca of Banter podcast. As always, hit us up on all the socials and can't wait for next week. Cheers.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers, boys.